Hello again.
Hello, it's the Horror Guys. I'm Kevin,
I'm Brian.
and this is not our regularly scheduled program.
This is the bonus podcast.
We're still experimenting with doing bonus reviews and as a bonus podcast.
This is our third bonus podcast for the Substack subscribers for horrorbulletin.com.
Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
Our experiments are a lot less deadly than some of the experiments we've been seeing in movies lately.
Those always seem to go really, really bad.
They do.
Ours, well, maybe they're not great, but they
They're
don't kill
harmless.
anybody.
Yes. They're not going to create an alien monster thing that's going to destroy the world.
Yeah. So anyway, to get this podcast regularly, go over to horrorbulletin.com and sign up for the Horror Bulletin list. You'll get our reviews in your email every week, and you will get the podcast also if we keep doing it.
Yeah. We'll
Not
see.
quite committed yet on that one.
We see.
If not, you can get our regular podcast over at horrorguys.com. Follow the podcast link there and get all the regular reviews there. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what do we got this time?
Well, we got 4 movies. We're going to do a double dose of The Shining, the one from 1980 and the miniseries from 1997.
Extra shiny.
And a new film called Blood Red Ox and VHS 2, which came out in 2013.
All right. Sounds cool. All right. Well, let's get right to it. What do we got first?
We got VHS 2.
VHS 2. Yeah, we liked VHS 1. I think everybody liked VHS 1. It was a very influential thing at the time. Anthology movie, sort of a retro kind of thing, because it's all supposed to be done on videotapes.
And we're back to retro again. They're
Yeah.
still doing the videotape thing.
Well, that's the whole series.
Yeah.
That's always going to be like that.
Yes, I know. Yeah, that's what I meant, though.
Yeah, this one came out in 2013, directed by Simon Barrett, Jason Eisner, and Gareth Evans. Written by Simon Barrett, Jamie Nash, and Timo Giajanto. I mangled that one, I bet.
I don't know.
Stars Lawrence Michael Levine, Kelsey Adams, and Adam Wingard. Hour and 36 minutes. Trailer in the show notes.
Kelsey Abbott. You said Adams.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's too early for this.
His name's Adam.
Yeah. Spoiler free, it's another anthology of short tales. Better, we thought, than the first one was. The effects here are excellent, the gore is juicy, and the stories and acting are all very good. Very cool.
Yeah.
What
it
happens?
was. Well, the first off is tape 49. 2 detectives, Larry and Aisha, record a guy having an affair and then blackmails the guy to pay them more than his wife is paying him, the client. So these are a couple of crooked private investigators. They're not good people. They then move on to a woman who hired them to find her missing college kid. Well, they break into an old house, find a room full of TVs all tuned into static. Is this the house from the first film? Could be. He explores the house while she checks out the computer. There's a guy who recorded himself talking about a recent find of a special film, and she plays a tape.
Yeah, this is kind of the wraparound story for the anthology. Mm-hmm. And the first story here is Phase 1, Clinical Trials.
Herman has had surgery to implant a bionic eye, and they warn him that he might start to see things that aren't there. It records everything. And I noticed right away it records audio too. It's not just we're seeing it from his POV, including audio.
Google Glass, people. Google Glass.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We get everything else from his point of view. He then goes home and wanders around doing normal things. Wait, is that someone in his bed? Nah, hallucination. They warned him. Well, then he sees a blood-covered man in his bedroom. He calls the doctor and tells him what's going on. He sees a little girl in the hallway next, and he ends up spending the night hiding in the bathroom. Well, he ends up sleeping all day, but Clarissa from the doctor's office comes around toward evening. She says that she was born deaf and got a cochlear implant, a bionic ear, basically. And she says she heard a little girl crying when she came in, and she tells how she and now he can sense things that others can't. She warns him not to interact with them. It just encourages the dead. Well, Clarissa knows how to make the ghost go away, and she strips down and has sex with Herman.
That escalated quickly.
Night falls, and there's someone in Herman's bed again. It's the little girl. And before long, the place is crawling with dead people.
Don't pay attention to them.
I see dead people.
I hear dead people.
Yeah, there you go. And next up was A Ride in the Park. Well, Larry tells Aisha to keep watching the tapes. She may find a clue to the missing kid's whereabouts. And on to the next story. She puts another tape in. Mike, a bicycler, is planning a ride in the park, and he has a helmet cam. So there's lots of POV in this one, too. Well, he comes across a woman screaming for help, and then she starts puking blood. Ew. He hears moaning from the woods. It's a bunch of zombies. The woman turns on him and bites him. And we soon see the biker puking up blood and dying as well. And all through his zombie helmet cam that's still filming. So it's a zombie POV.
Put a camera on a zombie.
Zombie POV, yeah. Well, a couple more bikers find the body, which starts moving after a few minutes. Before long, there are 3 biker zombies. And we learn how hard it is to be among the walking dead.
Very frustrating.
Well, when Larry returns to the video room, Aisha is having a nosebleed. She sends Larry to the drugstore for some medicine while she waits, and she puts in another tape, which is Safe Haven. A man with a camera crew interviews a cult leader. And then we cut to security cam footage of life inside the cult's compound. Malek, Lena, and the film crew come to the compound for interviews. A girl there gives Lena a necklace, but she throws it away. Bad move. They set up for an interview with Father, the leader. Lena has some kind of attack and goes to the restroom. Lena goes into a classroom, and 2 weird women scare her. Lena tells Adams that he has gotten her pregnant, and Malek, his actual fiancé, hears it all on the monitor. Oops. Well, the clock rings, and the father announces that the time has come. Everyone needs to drink every drop from the cups given to them.
Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then Father pulls a knife on the cameraman, and Malek finds something extra nasty in the basement. Just when you think you have the whole cult thing figured out, it goes off the rails. That sure did. That was a surprise. Slumber Party Alien Abduction is the next one. Well, Larry returns to find Aisha dead. He finds a tape marked Watch, so he does that. And some bad boys raid one of their sister's slumber parties and see things they shouldn't. The sister and her boyfriend get the camera and plan revenge. And suddenly, aliens attack and abduct everyone. What?
That changed channels quickly.
It did, yeah. Well, back at the video house, Larry watches a tape of the missing kid shoot himself in the head, get back up, and go out the door. Maybe his partner isn't as dead as he thought she is. Yeah.
Well, the gore effects are pretty spectacular here. A lot of them are pretty juicy.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, all 5 segments in this are really good. It's easily the best of the series, and far better than the original. The wraparound story wasn't much, but it didn't need to be. The weakest of the bunch was the final segment with the aliens, but it was pretty good too.
Yeah, it was. Anytime there's aliens, it's still pretty good.
Oh, not always. Blood Red Ox from 2022.
Brand new.
Directed by Rodrigo Bellet, written by Nate Atkins and Rodrigo Bellet, stars Mazen Akar, Kaolin Bass, and Andrea Campavono. Hour and 34 minutes, trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free, this is going to be hard to do without spoiling it.
We shouldn't spoil it.
Okay, well, what happens spoiler free?
Well, it begins weird and interesting, but it gets too strange and disjointed after a while. It does conclude by explaining what's gone on, but it almost seems too late at that point. The cinematography is beautiful, and there are lots of good-looking men in brief scenes, but overall the horror guys didn't dig this one too much, with one, me, going a weak thumbs up, and the other,
me,
Brian, going a pretty strong thumbs downward.
Yeah, very strong thumbs downward.
I'd almost like to see it again.
Yeah, here's the way we do this.
Now that I know what's what.
We watch movies Well, I mean, assuming they're new movies, we watch them one time, and we tell you what we think after watching it once, because most people watch a movie one time.
Yeah.
If it's a movie that requires multiple watchings, we won't usually say that, but that's not the way we review things. We don't analyze deeply. We watch them once, like you do.
But I think this one needs a second viewing.
I couldn't do it. You couldn't pay me.
Okay.
We open on. I won't ruin the whole
He
thing.
really didn't enjoy it.
We open on a woman with a rifle in her mouth. Oh, it started out really good. The first hour, I was fully entertained. Maybe not the first whole hour, but quite a ways into it.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it changes.
We
Yeah.
open on a woman with a rifle in her mouth. She pulls the trigger. Amat wakes up. It was just a weird dream. He and his boyfriend Amir get off the plane. They've been together for 3 or 4 years, and this is Amir's hometown. Amir is writing a book about the local water factory. And we're like, what is that?
And it took me a while it took both of us a while to figure out what they're talking about.
They
They're
explain
talking
later
about-
on that it's the rainforest.
Yeah, the big old biome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a spoiler, no big deal, really.
Yeah.
They stop at a place where an injured ox is lying on the road. Someone had hit it with their car. The driver, Aman Kaya, gets out and shoots it and puts it out of its misery. Credits roll. Well, they get home, and Amat is still upset about the ox. He watched them kill it, and he's very upset about that.
Mm-hmm.
Amir reads a book about God making a bull and a fish named Bahamut. Amaru is Amankaya's brother, and he stops over for a visit. Along with him is Americo, the owner of the dead ox, who is very cold toward Amir and Amat. They all go to a local celebration, and Amankaya sings. As she sings, we get flashes of her and others covered in blood, which may or may not be hers.
Yeah, and it's not clear with the local guy there. Is he just PO'd about the ox, or is he up to something more sinister? Or,
We don't know.
There's an unknown there. Yeah.
That night, Amat has a nightmare. He gets a glimpse of a big horned demon in the house, and the head of the ox is in the kitchen. He admits to Amir that he's had these dreams since childhood. They went away for a long time, but now they're back. Amir blames the alcohol and the jet lag. Well, in the morning, we see that Amir has a wedding ring in his pocket, presumably for Amat. They head over to the water factory, with Amaru guiding them. Amat gets naked and jumps into a freezing cold mountain spring, and that just looked really cold.
That did, yeah.
Well, they explain that there was a fire here in 2017, and Amaru's mother was killed. This water factory they keep talking about turns out to be just a generic name for the rainforest. That night, Amat says he's going to write a story about a woman who shoots a bull in the face. Later, the two men dance together and make out. We flash back to a time when Amat blames Amir for cheating on him, as if he doesn't remember the previous night. Then Amankaya calls and offers Amir a job. When Amat gets home, they argue some more. We get more flashes of people covered in blood. The next day, Amat doesn't even remember who Amir is and threatens to call the cops. Amat has some real mental issues. He shaves his head, starts a fight with Amir, and runs out into the woods.
We should stop there.
Yeah, I think we should stop there.
Because I think that's about the point where it really starts getting weirder.
It does definitely get weird.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, the devil is really buff. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, he's a big feller.
They do say he's a tempter. All right. I'm going to skip over some of this because it's all spoilery.
Mm-hmm.
The first half hour is promisingly weird. It went from a basic drama to a what the hell is going on very quickly. Eventually, someone shows up and explains things, which I thought would clear things up, but it actually only made it worse.
Yeah, it did.
After it was over, Kevin had to point out a few things to me that I had even overlooked. And yeah, it changes things.
Big time.
Now, there's a lot of quiet whispering in the background in many scenes that at least I couldn't quite make out.
Mm-mm.
You couldn't either?
I don't think you're supposed to.
I think it
It was
probably
atmospheric.
means something. I
Yeah,
mean, I
maybe.
caught words
Yeah.
here and there, and I think it probably would have helped, but I couldn't tell what it was. I feel like I didn't completely understand the film, even though I was obviously watching closely. Kevin thinks he got it more than I did, but he found it pretty depressing in its conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's
probably about it.
my reluctance to watch it again. because I think it might be even more depressing if you fully get it.
The landscaping and cinematography are beautiful. It's got lots of guys wandering around in briefs, so there's that. But otherwise, the plot is scrambled drivel that makes no damn sense at all.
Harsh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I really can't say why I didn't like this without spoiling it, but I didn't. Mm-hmm. And you
I can't.
didn't really like it either. You said it was depressing.
Yeah. It is. It was, I thought.
Okay,
Yeah.
so one with a more cheerful ending.
Yeah, an uplifting ending.
The Shining from 1980. Directed by Stanley Kubrick, written by Stephen King, Stanley Kubrick, and Diane Johnson. Stars Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, and Danny Lloyd. 2 hours and 26 minutes.
Still not as long as the miniseries, though.
No. Spoiler free. The tension starts low and ratchets steadily higher and higher. There are some plateaus, though, and this may be a little too long in the opinion of the horror guys. Still, it's masterfully directed, has an excellent cast, and is pretty true to the Stephen King novel. And it holds up very well after 40 years.
Yeah, I thought so. I've seen it several times now, and
Yeah,
it still holds up. Yeah.
Oh, it's a classic. Mm-hmm. Comparing this and the miniseries that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, though, which did you like better?
The original.
The Nicholson one?
Mm-hmm. I thought Nicholson and Shelley Duvall were better in the roles. I liked the kid in the miniseries better. See, if you could transplant the kid from the miniseries into this original Shining movie, I think it'd be absolutely perfect.
I think 1980 was a better movie. I think 1997 told the story the way Stephen King wanted it better.
More so, and more depth.
Yeah, it's much more book-like. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think as far as entertainment value, the first one is better.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, well, what happens?
Oh, this is so long.
Wait for the next part.
So much happens. Well, a car drives up into the mountains as credit rolls. It drives up to a huge resort hotel in the mountains. Jack Torrance is there for an interview. He wants to be the caretaker of the place for the winter season. He's a writer, wants a change. Back at home, his son Danny and wife Wendy talk about going to the mountains for the winter. Danny has a talking finger named Tony that seems to know things.
Hello, Danny. I will talk to you in the mirror, and I talk like this because I'm a finger.
Mm-hmm. His alter ego, his imaginary friend, is it's strange. He's a strange little boy.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Ullman warns that they get 20 feet of snow every winter, so Jack and his family will be completely snowed in and secluded. He warns about how bad the isolation can be, but Jack's all in for that. Ullman also talks about the tragedy of 1970, where the caretaker went insane and killed his family with an axe. Cabin fever, they called it.
I remember this took place in 1980, so it's like 10 years before. This is not ancient history.
Right, yeah. Well, Danny has a vision of blood in the elevator and two strange twin girls. He faints, and Wendy calls a doctor to check him out. She says there's nothing physically wrong with Danny. Wendy tells the story of how Jack got angry drunk once and dislocated Danny's arm, but it's okay because he didn't mean it, and he's sorry, and he'll never do it again. And yeah. Well, the family goes up to the Overlook Hotel on closing day. Jack tells Danny about the Donner Party and cannibalism. Way to calm the kid down. Ullman
Okay, and right here is where I think the two movies really diverge. Mm-hmm. You can tell that Jack hates his family.
Uh-huh.
He's apparently he got Wendy pregnant, and he sees them both as a major burden.
Mm-hmm.
And he resents it, and he hates them both.
I don't think that didn't
subtle.
come across in the miniseries.
I don't think that happened in the miniseries. I think he was a very loving father, and it just went badly. Mm-hmm. He was an alcoholic in both of them.
Yeah.
Although the alcoholism really doesn't come up that much in the first one. I mean, he had a problem, and he hurt the boy at one point. Mm-hmm. But they don't make quite as big a deal out of it as they do in the miniseries.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, in this one here, he's just an asshole from the beginning. He really is.
Pretty much.
He's almost borderline crazy before he ever gets the job.
Yeah. So you know this is going to go poorly.
And we can't really tell at this point, but Wendy, she's just a limp washcloth. She's just got no personality. She's weak. She's not that smart, apparently. and she's just there for the ride, basically. He supports her. I guess that's where the stress from on his end comes from, because she's just not
Because she is such a
weak.
a wet noodle.
Yeah, wet noodle. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't like any of these characters. It sounds like
Well, Danny's a good little boy.
they have their issues. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they get the they get the tour of the place. Danny sees the weird twins again. They go outside and look at the famous hedge maze. And the place is built over an Indian burial ground. Stephen King likes his Indian burial grounds.
Doesn't everyone?
Ullman introduces Chef Dick Halloran to the Torrances. Halloran takes Danny and Wendy to the kitchen, shows her where all the food and cooking stuff is, and then they leave Danny with him to have some ice cream. Halloran explains that he and Danny share a gift, a way of seeing things that other people can't. But he tries to emphasize that what they see is not real. Halloran calls it a shining, and some people can do it. And Danny asks about room 237, and knows that Halloran is afraid of it, although Halloran denies it. And he does warn him to stay away from that room, though. Yeah. It's harmless, but don't go in there. Yeah, right. Well, a month passes. Jack still doesn't have any good ideas for his book, which annoys him. Wendy likes the place a lot, and so does Jack. Jack even feels like he's been there before, even before his interview. Danny and Wendy play in the big maze outside. It's really dense, and the walls are thick. Inside, Jack has a scale model of the maze on a table.
There's no way that hedge maze could be as big as that maze on the table.
Yeah, that was massive.
Yeah.
Well, a few days later, there are reports of a big snowstorm approaching. Danny notices 237, and he's got to check it out. But the door is locked, so not today. Jack gets grouchy when Wendy interrupts his work. The snow hits and goes on for several days. Wendy notices that the phones are out, and they do have a radio, which they communicate with a ranger station, and they say the snow is one of the worst that it's ever been. Well, Danny keeps encountering the twins. Come and play with us, they say. Well, he gets a glimpse of them alive and also as mutilated corpses. Jack has a dream about killing Wendy and Danny. Danny comes in with a bruised neck. Wendy blames Jack for abusing him again. It was actually the ghosts that did it to him. Well, Jack goes to the hotel bar and looks to scrounge up a drink, but everything's been removed. Until Lloyd the bartender pops up and pours him a bourbon. Jack drinks to not having a family. He really regrets having Wendy and Danny, and here he openly admits it.
Yeah, it's real clear.
While he drinks ghost booze, which
Yeah.
seems to have a real effect on him.
Is it ghost booze or is it real?
I think it was ghost booze.
Now, in the miniseries, they make it real clear that there is no alcohol in the entire hotel.
Uh-huh.
Here, that's not necessarily the case.
I think it's ghost booze. No, there was no hotel. There was no booze.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no real booze. It's ghost booze. It's confusing. Well, in Miami, Halloran hears about the snowstorm in Colorado. He gets a shining that tells him things are going bad for the Torrances. He's kind of in touch with Danny, or Danny's so powerful that he can hear him all the way there. Wendy says that Danny told her that someone in 237 attacked him. Jack checks out 237, finds a naked woman in the bathtub. He likes her and they kiss, but as they pull away from the kiss, she turns into a rotting old zombie woman. Well, he nopes out of the room very quickly, locks the door.
Ew.
Yeah. But then Jack just tells Wendy that Danny must have hurt himself. When Wendy wants to leave the motel, Jack says she's messed up his life enough already and he's not going to let her do it again. He's got a job to do, and he's going to write. And
You ruined my life once with that little kid. Now you're not going to do it again.
yeah, he said the quiet part out loud. Yeah. Well, Jack goes upstairs to the ballroom. There's quite a party going on. Everyone in 1920s era clothing. Lloyd pours him more bourbon. Jack meets Delbert Grady, the guy who went crazy and killed his own family in 1970. He had a wife and 2 daughters. Twins. Grady tells him, "You are the caretaker. You have always been the caretaker." I should know. I've always been here. He also warns that Danny is trying to get Halloran to come and get involved in the hotel. Somehow they know about that. Well, Tony
Tony the Finger.
Tony the Finger, yes, starts yelling red rum through Danny. Red rum, red rum. Halloran calls the forest rangers, who tried to call the hotel on the radio. Jack hears them and wrecks the radio. First thing in the morning, Halloran gets on a plane back to the hotel. And the roads are really bad, but he knows he has to get to the Overlook. Wendy goes to find Jack, and this time she's carrying a bat. She wants to get in the snowcat and drive down the mountain, but she needs to check if Jack is willing to go before she leaves him. Well, he's not there, and his manuscript is. And all this time he's been writing Jack, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, over and over on hundreds and hundreds of pages.
Well, at least he's doing something.
he's all this time, and there's all these scenes previously where, you see him furiously typing, and you think, he's really being, at least he's writing. Well, yeah. So Jack catches Wendy looking at his stuff and lectures her about his responsibilities to the hotel. And he might be a little unhinged at this point.
A little bit.
And ghost drunk, He keeps pushing, so she whacks him with the bat. She drags him to the food storage, one of the lockers, and locks him in there. Jack laughs at Wendy's plan because he's wrecked the radio and the snowcat. And then the ghosts let him out. Well, Danny picks up a machete, continues to repeat red rum, which he writes on the door in lipstick. And Wendy sees the word in the mirror. It's murder spelled backwards. Jack arrives outside the room with an axe for that iconic "Here's Johnny" scene. Danny escapes through the restroom window, but Wendy is too big. Meanwhile, Halloran is picking up a snowcat and arrives at the hotel finally. Jack hears him coming, kills him with an axe almost immediately.
Well, that was a little anticlimactic.
I hated that. I hated that happened to him, that build up in that character, and then just bring him back and, okay, he's dead. Oh, that was lame. I think that's my biggest complaint about The Shining, this version of it.
There's whole problems with the whole Shining that I'll get into in a few minutes.
Yeah, kind of. Well, Danny screams and runs for it with Jack in pursuit. Wendy sees some ghostly visions in the hotel rooms. And then she runs into Grady in a room full of corpses. Finally, she sees gallons and gallons of blood come out of the elevators and runs outside. Jack turns on the outside lights and watches Danny run into the hedge maze. He leaves footprints in the snow, so he's easy to track, except Danny's a clever boy. He backtracks, takes a different turn. Jack gets lost and freezes to death. Danny finds his way out of the maze, catches up with Wendy, and the two of them take Halloran's snowcat down the mountain to safety. So they wouldn't have made it away without Halloran bringing the snowcat, at least. There's that, yeah. Well, we cut to the ballroom, and we see there's many photos of old times gone by. One of them shows a bunch of guests at a party in 1921. Front and center is Jack in the photo. He really has always been the caretaker.
Which really makes no sense.
No, doesn't.
Yeah. Well, it's a very long film. It's more than a half an hour until the family is even alone at the hotel. Jack is pretty much insane within the next 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it is all amping up the tension, and there's a lot of tension to amp here.
Yeah, he was a good director. He did a good job of that.
Oh, yeah. In my opinion, it's still about a half an hour too long. And to be honest, most of the stuff about Danny and Halloran's shinings don't really add much, in my opinion, and it really could have been cut out.
But it's called The Shining.
I know. It's the most important part of the story, but it doesn't mean anything. The kid has visions.
It's telepathy.
Do the visions help Danny in any way? No, not really.
Well,
his father goes crazy and tries to kill them. What do the visions got to do with that?
Well, that's a separate issue.
He contacts Halloran telepathically, and Halloran comes up and he dies. How does that affect the story?
Like he couldn't have warned Halloran, like, hey, Dad's gone crazy and he's got an axe.
Yeah. The whole Shining.
Be careful when you come in the hotel.
The whole Shining business doesn't amount to anything. It's a haunted house movie with a telepathic kid. You take away the telepathy, and it's still a haunted house movie.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's clear from the very first scene together that Jack doesn't like Danny and barely tolerates Wendy. Isolation just makes those feelings escalate. Even without the supernatural stuff, this winter wasn't going to end well. Jack didn't want a family, and he makes that really clear before the end. The setting between the hotel itself and the frozen nastiness outside lends itself perfectly to isolation and terror. Jack Nicholson had been in good movies before this, but this, in my opinion, is his best over-the-top performance. He totally looks unhinged. Ain't nobody arguing with that point.
Yeah, he was mighty good in this.
Yeah. Well, they all were good in
They,
this.
they were, yeah.
They weren't necessarily likable characters, but the acting was all excellent, and the directing was very good. Yeah, there's a reason why everybody says it's a classic.
And then there's talk, Shelley Duvall and others have said that Kubrick was kind of abusive toward her, and
I don't know, kind of abusive.
okay, he wanted her to get into character, and thought this was helping her, and there was psychological abuse going on during the production, isolating her and making her think that nobody liked her, and
And these are just stories that have come out in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, but I guess that she was kind of messed up for a while after this. And
I think
might
she still
be.
is.
Yeah, psychologically. Yeah. But it made a good movie.
Yeah. And then they decided, well, Stephen King never liked it.
Yeah,
he said that
wasn't-
Kubrick made too many changes. That wasn't really the story he wanted to tell.
Yeah, the hedge maze isn't in the book. There's some things,
Yeah.
differences between the book and the original movie.
So in 1997, he decided to do it himself. Yeah, 1997, The Shining was a 3-part TV miniseries directed by Mick Garris, written by Stephen King, stars Rebecca De Mornay, Steven Weber, Will Horneff, 4 hours and 33 minutes. Trailer in the show notes if you haven't seen this one.
4 hours and 33 minutes.
But
But it was broke up over 3 nights.
Yeah, it's 3.5 parts. Probably 2 hours with commercials. It was long, with a lot more exposition and detail than the 1980 movie version. It followed the books a bit more closely, and Stephen King was more directly involved with the filmmaking. The cast is very good, the special effects are cool, and overall, it's a fun watch. Yeah, and anyway, this was a 3-part miniseries on TV.
I saw it when it aired.
I think I did too.
Commercials and all.
It was a big deal at the time.
Yeah, it was.
Well, in part 1, Pete Watson explains the boiler system to Jack Torrance. He needs to release the pressure every day or bad things will happen.
And right off the bat, I have an issue with that. But this is right from the book too. This was a thing.
Who
in
would
the
design
book.
a system like that?
Well, it's a faulty system.
Yeah.
But spend, what it would be hundreds, thousands maybe, to install a release valve. I don't think an emergency pressure release, I don't think would be that expensive to install. When it's this important, like the thing is literally going to explode and take the hotel with it if somebody doesn't continuously drain off the pressure.
You say that like it's Chekhov's pressure valve.
Oh, it certainly is, yeah. But, the owners are cheap. Okay, there's cheap and stingy. But, hello, this is,
Major.
major. Spend $100 on a safety valve.
Yeah. Okay, well, there's also a bunch of rats in the basement.
Or fix the steam problem, but at least you could put a pressure valve on there that would release in an emergency.
Watson whines about how cheap Mr. Ullman is. Every hotel has its scandals, he says. And he tells a story about room 217 that committed suicide a year ago, a couple years back. The last caretaker, Grady, killed himself also with a shotgun. Torrance is going to be the new caretaker, and Watson does mention that there aren't any ghosts here.
Definitely not.
No, definitely no ghosts here. Ullman shows off the oversized croquet game out in the yard. He explains how Horace Derwin saved the place a few decades ago. The old hotel nearly went out of business. Ullman knows that Torrance is an alcoholic, and he doesn't really trust him to watch over the hotel over the winter, but the board overrode his decision. He's kind of a jerk.
He is, yeah.
Also, he knows Jack was fired from teaching for assaulting a student. Jack says he's sober now, and his family will help him get through the winter.
One day at a time.
Back at home, Danny tells his mother Wendy that Jack got the job. He just knows these things, so she expects that Danny's right. She remembers back when Jack hurt Danny when he was drunk, and she threatened to leave the instant it ever happened again. Outside, Danny sees his imaginary friend Tony, who is creepy, but is not just a finger.
Yeah, and in this one he really sees him.
Yeah,
as
he's
as
a
another
teenage-looking person. He's
who
a
kind of
real person, yes.
looks kind of ghostly and floating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony warns Danny to stay away from the hotel in the snow. On the way up to the hotel, Jack tells Danny about the downer party and that no one can leave the hotel after the snow flies. Again, Tony warns Danny to stay away, but Danny knows better than to say anything. When they arrive, Danny likes the cool topiary animals. There's no hedge maze in this one. They have animals clipped out of hedges.
And that's in the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
They meet Dick Halloran, who makes an impression on Danny. He knows that Danny's nickname is Doc without even being told. Halloran says Danny has a thing called a shining, where he sees and knows things other people can't. He's run into others like that from time to time, and the two of them have a telepathic conversation. Danny gives the old man a nosebleed when Dick challenges him to give him all he's got. Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Danny holds back and still gives him a wallop, as well as breaking one of the taillights in his car. Halloran warns Danny about scary things he's seen inside. He emphasizes that the things Danny sees can't hurt him. They aren't real.
Sure they can't.
Halloran shows them to the presidential suite, and Danny sees the murders that happened in that room long ago. Soon the old man leaves for Florida, and the three are alone for the winter. We see small signs that things happen on their own in the Overlook. Could it be ghosts?
Yeah.
No, there's no ghosts here.
It starts small, doors closing by themselves, things like
little
that.
stuff.
Yeah.
Trying to fix a hole in the roof, Jack encounters wasps. He sprays the nest with poison. Danny wants the nest for his room. That night, Danny has a seizure alone in the bathroom, and Jack gets angry and carried away. Jack feels bad and immediately apologizes. He's a little bit afraid of Tony, too.
Mm-hmm.
Midnight strikes on the clock, and the empty hotel comes to life. Danny is attacked by wasps. That nest wasn't as dead as Jack thought.
Ghost wasps.
That was really dumb. Who gives your kid a nest from the... Yeah, okay. After much drama, Jack takes the nest outside to freeze. End of part 1. All right, well, that was all just basically set up for an hour and a half. A little bit of ghostly stuff there, but nothing major.
Introducing the characters and the situation and the shining. And
So
yeah.
it takes its time.
It does.
All right, part 2. Wendy takes Danny to the doctor in town to verify that he doesn't have epilepsy. It's still green outside. There's no snow. She talks about Jack and his alcohol problem and how he broke Danny's arm. Back at the Overlook, Jack digs through old books in the dusty basement.
Yeah, it's as long as the roads are clear, it's not an unreasonable drive back to civilization and town and stuff.
Yeah.
They're at the Overlook. She's just driven to the nearest, little burg.
They don't get snowed in immediately here.
Uh-huh.
Well, we flash back to 1947 on Horace Derwent's ball, but Jack stops when he begins hearing voices. Once he decides there's nobody there, he reads on to see that a mob boss was once executed in the hotel also. Lots and lots of dead people.
Lots of violence.
November arrives, and with it, the snow. Danny hears voices that say, "Let's play," so he follows them. He almost goes into room 217, but Tony warns him not to. It doesn't matter because the door is locked anyway. Danny goes down to the office and takes one of the pass keys. When he goes to return the key, Jack catches him, and Jack starts out harsh but gets control of himself and just lectures Danny about the rules. And throughout all of this, we get a lot of talk about Alcoholics Anonymous and how he's trying to shape up. And at no point do we get the idea that he resents his kids. His kid.
No, he's just struggling with the.
He's just an alcoholic
struggling with
trying to
demon
get
alcohol.
over it. Yeah.
And his plan is he's going to have to do the AA meetings, by radio when things get bad and he needs, to talk to somebody. He's going to be cut off from his support too. He's a little concerned about that.
How would you do something like that on radio?
It sure wouldn't be anonymous anymore. Anybody with the radio could hear what you guys are saying.
Well, I mean, I don't know how big that
It wouldn't
town
be a
is,
group,
but how many alcoholics would they have on radio?
Well, they might have, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see how the logistics of that would work. But all right. Well,
assuming the town has an AA group, they're used to communicate. This is an area where
okay, they could have a
are
real
isolated.
group, a real in-person group in town and have a radio. Yeah, all right, I see that.
And this is an area of the country that gets heavy snows like this all the time. There's going to be people in cabins and various, there's going to be radio communication. They're going to be set up with a lot of radios, but still, it wouldn't be anonymous anymore. Everybody listening in who's got a radio.
Yeah. Well, Danny tells Wendy that Jack isn't writing his play anymore. He just reads the papers in the basement and thinks about writing a book about the Overlook. Danny sees Red Rum written on his wall, but he doesn't know what it means. December rolls around and Jack is losing interest in Wendy. He says he isn't drinking. He couldn't be, in fact, because there's no alcohol in the hotel, but he acts an awful lot like he has been. Wendy talks about leaving tomorrow when the weather breaks. They fight, but soon make up. Jack says he felt like he was meant to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Next day, Jack sees some weirdness outside with a very angry-looking topiary. Could they be alive?
Yeah, they start coming after him. Yeah.
Not long after, they get a snowstorm. Jack hears his dead father's voice on the radio, and Danny finally gets into room 217, and the voice on the radio tells Jack about it. Jack ends up smashing the radio.
And I thought that was a nice touch with the topiary, too, that it's all snow covered. Everything is just completely covered in snow, and the topiary's coming to life and coming after him.
They shake off the snow.
Yeah, and then he snaps out of it, and the topiaries are back being bushes again, but they have no snow on them now. So something did really happen, maybe.
And all this time, he's talking about he wants to get a good reference from this job. He has to do a really good job. He's got to get Mr. Ullman's reference to get his career back. And then he smashes the multi-$100 radio.
Oh, just the first of many
There's
things
no
that get
accident
smashed.
at that point.
Yeah.
Danny in room 217 finds a rotting undead woman in the room's bathtub who does bad things to him. Jack assumes Danny broke the radio, forgetting that he did it himself.
Yeah, the ghosts are starting to influence him already.
When Danny turns up with a choking bruise around his neck, Wendy blames Jack. Danny screams, "It was her!" And at first, Jack thinks Wendy did it, and then they
No,
continue
it
looking.
was the ghost lady from the bathtub.
Danny tells them about the 217 lady and the Shining and the ghosts, and he tells them pretty much everything. Jack then goes up to 217 and gets a scare himself. He comes back and says, "No, there's nothing up there." He knows there is.
Well, or did
He
they make
forgot.
him forget already,
Yeah.
too? Yeah.
Jack and Wendy fight some more about leaving. The next morning, Jack checks out the snowmobile in the garage and decides that it would be a bad idea to leave. He then shows Wendy that the snowmobile has also been destroyed, just like the radio.
Uh-huh.
Danny plays outside in the snow as the topiary defrosts, as Wendy gets locked inside an office. We see the CGI animated topiary closing in behind Danny. End of part 2.
Which is scary and creepy, but boy, that was obvious CGI.
It did not hold up well.
Yeah.
Yeah, of all this, there's some special effects here. It mostly looks good, but the
Mostly
CGI
practical effects. The
topiary
CGI
is awful.
Yeah, there's a couple other CGI points that are a little weak.
Yeah, but that green stuff is just bad.
That particular scene was especially egregious.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Part 3. Jack hears Wendy screaming. Wendy breaks a window in the office to get out.
More damage.
They both rush outside to get Danny as the animals close in on them, and the animals don't seem to have moved, even though we saw them earlier. However, they're not covered in snow anymore.
Again, yes.
That night, they're all woken up by the sounds of a party. They go to investigate, and there's more fighting between Wendy and Jack.
Yeah, and there's no sign of the actual people or anything, but there's confetti and
Glitter and
a
confetti,
mask,
yeah.
A party mask, and yeah.
January rolls around, and Danny gets a vision of Jack carrying a croquet mallet. He also gets a reminder about Red Rum. Meanwhile, in Miami, Dick Halloran has a seizure. Danny is calling for him for help telepathically. He jumps in the car and goes straight to the airport. The voices tell Jack where to find a fully stocked bar, and he can't resist anymore. It's not actually there, but it has the same effect as real booze.
Ghost booze.
Delbert Grady offers to pour him another drink, but says that Jack is expected at the party in the ballroom. There is a huge party going on in there, with lots and lots of dead-looking people. These are not normal-looking people. They're maybe not zombie level, but they're dead.
Well, and also it kind of like if you look at them at the right angle, you see them.
They change.
Yeah. Or their reflection. That the one she was coming on to him, and he looked at the reflection of the two of them, and she was all zombified in the reflection. Yeah.
Jack asks Grady about him being the former caretaker, and Grady says that Jack has always been the caretaker. Grady suggests that Danny and Wendy may need some discipline.
And that was a neat scene too, where he's partying in the ballroom, and it's this big raucous party, and then it shows
Just
our
him by
point
himself.
of view, him walking around in the big empty ballroom,
Dancing with his arm around nothing. And,
Yeah.
Halloran arrives in Denver, and they're saying that this might be the worst storm in 10 years coming up. Jack attacks Wendy and accuses her of all kinds of bad things. After a struggle, she knocks him out. Danny says the hotel is just using Jack, and it'll throw him away when it's done with him. They drag Jack back to his storage room and shut him in. Meanwhile, the boiler hasn't been released, and the meter shows it's starting to get into the red zone.
which is just a dumb plot device.
A ticking clock.
Yeah.
Well, Jack talks Grady into opening the door and letting him out in exchange for taking care of Danny. Meanwhile, Halloran has rented a snowcat and drives up the mountain to the overlook. Wendy goes to talk to Jack, but encounters ghosts instead. Jack, on the other hand, is gone.
They let him out.
She soon finds Jack, who has another croquet mallet. He hits her, and so does the magically moving furniture. He's completely insane by this point, and he thinks she's the cause of all his problems. She hits him good with a croquet ball, runs away, locks herself in their room. He soon breaks down the door, but Grady tells him about Halloran's imminent arrival. Halloran arrives, and the topiary all begin to perk up. He goes inside, but Jack immediately bangs him a few times with his big hammer. Jack goes off in search of Danny. Meanwhile, Tony reminds Danny what will happen when the boiler explodes. As Jack confronts Danny about who the ghosts really want, Wendy tries to wake up Halloran. Jack has a moment of clarity and apologizes for everything, but he doesn't last long. He warns Danny to run away, quick. Danny tells Jack about the boiler pressure, and Jack screams on the way to the basement. He'd forgotten all about it.
Mm-hmm.
Grady and Derwin tell Jack to hurry up with the boiler as he turns the valve off. Danny contacts Jack telepathically, telling them that he could stop the ghosts. Jack turns the valve back shut again, and Jack and Grady fight over the valve, but they're ghosts. They can't turn the thing. It's too late.
Yeah, it kind of... it's...
We see with
it's a-
the storage room that the ghosts
there
can
is-
affect things, but
They're
it's a
as
struggle.
solid as the plot requires.
Yeah. They could get that door open, but they can't turn the valve.
Yeah, sometimes they really can, and sometimes not so much. Yeah.
Outside, Halloran, Wendy, and Danny watch the topiary get ready to attack. The boiler explodes, and so do all the topiary animals. The hotel quickly burns to the ground, with Jack and all the ghosts inside. 10 years later, Halloran and Wendy watch Danny graduate from high school. Danny now looks exactly like Tony did. He was a vision of the future all along. Huh.
Yeah, he was just talking to himself. He was his own imaginary friend.
Why was he warning him to stay away from the hotel if he knew he was going to go? He was helping.
Yeah, helping.
Danny also sees Jack's ghost there, who congratulates him. And there's a sign outside the ruins of the Overlook that it's being rebuilt.
Uh-oh.
All right, and that's the end.
So this did follow the book more closely, I think,
Yeah.
than the original movie did.
I read the book way, way, way back. I don't remember much of it. I get it confused with both of the movies now.
Uh-huh.
Well, in part one, for the most part, part one is all set up, and it's mostly the same as the 1980 film in the details. This one just takes longer and has a lot more details and discussions. It's not boring. It just has a lot more exposition and shows us things they couldn't in 1980. Unlike the first film, Jack seems like a nice, normal guy who has made some mistakes. Jack Nicholson's version seemed to hate his family from the get-go.
Yeah, there was that difference.
In part two, Wendy seems much more sensible and competent than the Shelley Duvall version, who seemed far too submissive and passive. The hotel is perfectly normal looking, without the obviously ominous creep factor of the earlier film.
It did seem less creepy.
Yeah, that first
Yeah.
one, that was just a weird place. It looked out of date. It looked kind of dingy.
Right off the bat, it was ominous.
Even on the outside, with the snow leaning against the building and all that, it was creepy on the outside. This looked like a nice place.
Yeah.
In part three, starts out a little first, but the action picks up after a while. Actually, the cat and mouse between Jack and Wendy, I thought here, goes on maybe a little too long. And the ending is quite different from the 1980 film, since there's not even a hedge maze in this version.
No, there's not.
Overall, the acting all around is very good, especially from Cortland Mead as Danny. He's like 12 here, playing a 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
He's a weird-looking kid, but he plays the part perfectly. The screaming and the crying and getting injured and all that, it is very believable.
Yeah, he was good.
The CGI topiary hasn't held up very well, but the makeup and the other effects are all very good. It's maybe too long, but that's kind of the price you got to pay for including so much detail in a miniseries.
Yeah, and it was meant to be broken up into 3 parts, not in, Well, we did.
The first movie was pretty long.
We did break it up, but, you could watch this one in one sitting, unlike the original. How it was originally intended was broken up into parts.
Yeah.
You could watch this whole thing in one afternoon.
4.5 hours. Would you really want to, though?
Body breaks.
Stephen King himself was directly involved in the production here, as he never liked the 1980 film, as too many things were changed from his book. Hey. So which did you like better? You still going to stick with the first one?
Of the two Shinings? Yeah, I'm still going to stick with the first one. Yeah.
I think if you're really interested in the lore of the book, the second one is better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'd
I think
say
the second one is probably more realistic.
I'd say read the book and see the first movie. would be the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, the second one didn't have any twins. It didn't have the bartender character.
Well, he was acting as a bartender.
It had Grady as the bartender and the main ghost, and there was 2 separate ghosts. You had Grady and Lloyd in the first one.
Yeah. Well, there were two ghosts in the second one too.
One of them was Derwin, the manager.
Well, yeah.
I don't think he appeared in the first one, did he? I don't remember him.
No, I don't think so.
It was different cast of ghosts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked them both, but I think if you're going to just watch one, probably the 1980 version.
The 1980? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And, it's hard because they're both good.
Yeah.
It is, and they're both
And then when we did
different
the sequel, Dr. Sleep, a few months back, you can do a search on Horror Guys and read the review or listen to the podcast on that one. We both like Dr. Sleep pretty well.
Mm-hmm. That's years later, Danny has grown
Adult
up.
Danny, yeah.
Yeah, but it didn't end well. Yeah, because the Overlook is still there.
It's been rebuilt. It said so right at the end of this movie.
Oh, okay. All right.
It didn't blow up in the first, the 80 version. In
and
1997, it's
rebuilt.
going to rebuild it.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's still got that Indian burial ground, though.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Stephen King likes his Indian burial grounds.
It explains a lot. All right, well, that is our show for this week. Stop in over at horrorguys.com or horrorbulletin.com and read up.
Check out all our stuff.
Yeah. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next week.
See ya.